Hello, my kohais. Hope you're all doing well. I'm your host, Tyranno Senpai, and welcome to today's Prehistoric Kingdom speed build. Yes, the series is finally back. Also, I hope you guys had a Merry Christmas or are currently having a Merry Christmas, depending on when this comes out. And today, we're kind of starting a new build, because it seems that every time an update comes out for Prehistoric Kingdom, other saves kind of start lagging or slowing down or dropping frames and that sort of thing. But it seems that the game is complete enough to the point where I don't think that should be an ongoing issue. So for today's video, we are going to be building a couple of habitats to start with, but all of them are going to be feathered dinosaurs. As you can see, we've placed down some mini aviaries, which I'm currently having trouble fitting a path around, because I like to be precise as heck as I can with these particular builds, and putting a path around was kind of the challenging part of it all. And of course, I wanted to make these aviaries sort of these open enclosures, because I don't really like seeing animals in a cage, and I think it would look much better if we actually made them into an outdoor exhibit with some, some wooden fences and an actual biome around them. So of course I gave the aviaries a natural habitat, which is of course tropical and temperate, excuse me. I'm not used to talking this fast during a speed build. But as you can see, I'm now placing down the fence. This is just, to get an idea of what it's going to look like, placing down all these wooden planks around the corners. But obviously, that's just to see what it looks like. Then I take this bit of rope, and I'm trying to fit it around the edge. The problem is that I spend a long time trying to figure out how to wrap this plank, how to wrap this rope around this plank. You don't wrap a plank around the rope. Excuse me. I will get better at this, I promise. So I had to adjust the position, and I had to adjust how big the rope was in the end until I finally was comfortable with what I ended up with. And then came adding the rope that would connect it. I started off with the curved rope that bent down, and I copied and pasted that all around the edges, only to find that for some reason it didn't reach all the way, and I wanted them to be even, so I obviously deleted all that progress, and now I'm left with two poles with ropes around. So I decide ultimately that I want to go with a straight one, and I went with the smallest one they had. For this, I had a baseline for what I was going to do. Obviously, I'm going to replace this with an actual drooping rope at the end, and the straight rope is only there temporarily as a guide. So I know how long to make the rope, or how short I need to make it in case it doesn't reach. Man, you gotta love this tool where you can just stretch your cursor over all the objects that you want to copy and paste over. And there I go, deleting some extra stuff until we have a nice equal square on all sides. However, we are far from finished. I copied and pasted that over to the other side, only to delete it again because I realized I didn't place down the curved rope, and so I corrected that. And here you see I'm just now replacing all those straight ropes with the droopy ones to make it look a bit more natural, because the straight ones look very funny, and I don't like using them at all in my parks. I much prefer this look. It's probably because, I'm used to seeing this more than the straight ropes, because I used to see bits of wood like this on docks and marinas and things like that, and this is the style I would see. just a droopy, thick piece of rope. I do some minor adjustments, and soon I copy and paste all of the rope through all sides of the pen until finally I am satisfied with what I have. And so, after some minor adjusting, I copy and paste all that to the next side, and boom, just like that. I love the fact that you can do stuff like this in Prehistoric Kingdom, where you could just copy and paste everything and anything in your habitat. Next, I decided to paint all of the exhibits with some natural landscaping, such as rocks and sand, leaf litter, or whatever was required to make it look more natural, because an enclosure that's just grass looks boring to me. And then I added some appropriate plants, trying to make sure I don't get any really big ones, because I don't really like having tall trees or vegetation around in my enclosures with smaller animals. It looks weird, and in a zoo it might seem a little bit unnecessary for me. And then next up, I decided to make the private area for where I am going to be putting a hatchery down. So I put down a natural path, which is something that would look like what only park employees would be able to use before putting down a hatchery. Now, the problem with these hatcheries is that they are massive. They are huge. Like, it's kind of hilarious how big it is. So I put some path around it, but I also wanted to conceal it somehow from the public. After flattening it some more, because I noticed some irregularities, I patched it up a little bit with some more of that natural path, making it come back together, although you'll see me delete this later. And then I decided to conceal the exterior with a concrete fence to give the idea that, guests are not allowed here. Obviously, I later found that even putting these fences there don't exactly hide something this big. So after I put down all the concrete fencing, I decide to delete all the natural path, and I decide that I want to try to cover it up with some vegetation. So I do exactly that with the paintbrush, although it doesn't seem to reach everything, so I then manually place down some tropical trees to conceal the shape. It doesn't completely work, but for now, it works just fine. Putting down some kapok trees and then filling in the gaps with whatever small vegetative plants I can find. And then basically, that's it for that part of the build. Next, I wanted to put a gift shop right next to the entrance, because normally in zoos and parks, right next to the entrance there is a gift shop, at least from what I've seen. So I decided to put down a giganto gift shop, and I touched it up a little bit with some more paths so guests could walk around on all sides. And then I put down a restroom, and I think I put down a food stall. I don't remember which one, although we'll definitely see it in this build. And then I decided to cover up that gap in the path with more natural path, but for a different reason. And then, here we go. I'm looking for a restaurant, and I go with the tiniest fast food kiosk, because, you want to be on the go when you're in these parks. And it's also the start of the park, so you're probably going to want to get moving as quick as you can. And so there you have it. And then the next thing I decided to do is put some lights in the park, because sometimes guests will stay out late or during the sunset and they'll need to see. And then I placed down some information boards, and this is where I came to realize I put the wrong dinosaurs in the wrong aviary, so I had to delete both of them and replace them with the proper species. With the Achaeopteryx being in the tropical aviary and the Microraptor being in the temperate aviary. At least that's how I see. They don't really have a habitat need. If there was, obviously I will change it in the future. But this is kind of my vision in a way, because, Archaeopteryx was something from the Jurassic and Microraptor was more of a forest-dwelling animal, and it lived in China, so it made sense for me, in my head, to put it in a temperate environment. And of course, as usual, I have 5 males in both species in their own enclosures. I put down the information boards, this time now with the appropriate information, and I put down some donation boxes to make it feel like a real zoo. Next, I decided to put down some benches, in case, people are ready to leave, or, they're just resting after a long day and they come to sit down. I did try to put them on the other side, but then I remembered, oh yeah, there's a giant concrete fence there. I can't really do anything about that. I'm thinking about moving those chairs more further front, so, it looks a little better. Then I try to conceal the hatchery a bit more with some palm trees and whatever else I could find. I tried putting down these grassland trees, but I realized that they're kind of phasing into the hatchery, and I'm not really a fan of that. So next up, I'm moving on to the main attraction of this build, and probably what you guys have been waiting for this whole time, and that is the Velociraptor Enclosure. So I start off with a basic shape, a circle, running down the middle. I go by 20 meters for the path. This will give me a blueprint to follow, and it'll be all even, so it should, in theory, be all even on each side. Now, when you're putting an enclosure around a path, it's not going to be equal to the inside shape. So obviously you got to remake the shape. Then I'm splitting it down equally because apparently, for some reason, it wouldn't count it as an enclosure until I did this. So I made it into a complete circle, and here I am now choosing the Velociraptors. And I want to have 2 males and 2 females, 1 large male and whatever else. And I picked the biggest male and the most brightly colored male. And in the end, I found the smallest and the biggest male raptors. And then I go for the females, same deal here. And I love the fact that there are different saturations and different sizes, like in the real world. And again, I choose the biggest and the smallest females, kind of realizing they're all around the same size. Then I decompress the enclosure they're in. This is just so, I could turn it into like a pit, because in every build I've made for the Velociraptors off screen, I have put them in a pit in the ground. So guests would eventually walk over the pit, they'd look down and see the Velociraptors. The reason I decided a Velociraptor would be the first actual dinosaur I put down in an enclosure is because, people in the general public see Velociraptors as the ones we see in Jurassic Park or Jurassic World. So I thought, well, in this universe, I would like to have the Velociraptors be the first dinosaur that the guests see, to show that this isn't going to be like Jurassic Park. It is going to be a park with real dinosaurs that look like their real live counterparts. And I put down a bridge going across so guests can look down and view the raptors. Obviously, I had to manipulate the size of the bridge so it would cover both sides so guests could cross around it. And then I decide, that rather than have the whole enclosure be an invisible fence, I would like to have an actual fence around the pen, except for where the bridge is, so guests can still cross over it. This was a bit of a chore, because obviously there's a pit and there's no real smooth path for the fence to follow. Probably should have thought of all that beforehand. So here I go, deleting all the excess. I do a lot of touching up here, so there's not really much to comment on. I try to get it as close to the bridge as I possibly can, so I fill in all the gaps where it's needed, and so it looks pretty. I spend quite a lot of time on this, and I also try to deepen the hole a little bit, so the raptors can't suddenly jump out of the pen onto the bridge and escape. Like, when you're building a pen, you got to be realistic about how an animal might take a path to break out of a pen. And obviously, if you don't have a proper blockade from keeping them from getting out, they will get out. So by making the pit deeper and putting fences around the pit, they have no way of getting out. And here I am touching up one last time. And then I start decorating the habitat. With Velociraptors, I decided to go for an all-desert biome, putting down some desert grass, and then lining the cliffs up with rocks for good reason. I cover up any spillage with the tropic grass before returning to the desert biome, touching up whatever details I need, and then finally putting down some feeders for them to eat, and a temporary water bowl for them to drink, even though I never unpause it during this playthrough. It would just give me like a sort of a marker to put down. And then next up, I decided to put in some rocks. The Velociraptor fossils were found in the Flaming Cliffs. If I remember correctly, obviously in editing, I will correct myself if I'm wrong. So I decided to make the cliffs in this sandy and red and all that, just deserty colors, like the Flaming Cliffs. And I just line the entire outside with these rocks, using mostly 3 main ones, which were the cliff rocks that you could put around stuff to make an actual cliff wall, patching up any holes with smaller rocks, and just doing the whole process again and again, making it look natural and weirdly shaped, and also flattening and widening where it needed. And also making sure that, they don't contact the fence, because I want these rocks to actually be contained in the enclosure. Trying to get it under the bridge was the hardest part, because I needed to make sure that the rock didn't poke out of the bridge. But after that, building around it, not that difficult. Patching it up, and then I'll be copying and pasting it over to the other side. Now, it's not perfect because it was meant to be only on one side for the original build, so obviously you'll be seeing me moving stuff around, adjusting it, and you can still see even after that I have to plug up more spaces or move rocks back so they're not contacting the fence. I even had to delete a couple since they were poking out of the ground, and I didn't see any real reason to keep. Just making it look natural, but also pretty. Because zoos, at the end of the day, they're not real habitats. They're man-made. They were created by people. And here, you're now seeing me make a raptor shelter, which I modify quite a bit off camera. But this is the basic idea. I just took an existing one, removed any plants that didn't belong to the biome out of there, and changed the color and made it sandy and things like that, and then obviously tried to build around that. It's such an easy method. Like, these prefabs are just so good in case you're feeling like you don't want to build a whole thing. There's just like this base model you can use to manipulate into making whatever you want. Obviously, I do change this quite a bit at the end, but here I am painting more rock textures around the edges. I paint some sand around the feeder, although I don't really like this in particular, so obviously I go back and change it later. And then I plant some vegetation down, such as, these trees and bushes, and moving them around just so they're evenly spaced. I also move these around quite a bit after the speed build, just because I feel like they could be even more spaced out, and also for later um, modifications I make to the pen. But I do my best to make sure that the raptors have more than enough forest in their habitat, but also have more space to run around and things like that. Because raptors surprisingly have a very small need for an enclosure size, so I was actually shocked to see that 4 of them could actually fit happily in here. So I'm now just manually placing down plants, until the raptors get uncomfortable with what I put down. And then I place the actual water feature of the enclosure. And I line the edge of this with more plants and more rocks. Just covering it with sand so it doesn't look weird in texturing. And here I go with the rocks. I don't want to use cliffs because I feel like that's the cheap way out because they're just so big. And I just place some rocks down along the edge of the water, to give it a bit of a border and also make it look more natural. Back in the day, I used to put rocks in the center of the pond, but now I don't do that as often. In fact, I don't think I have in a very long while. And I line the edges with rocks that are smaller, so it looks, I say this a lot, more natural. And I place some lily pads and, to give it a little bit of color, because this is meant to be like an oasis. And again, it is a zoo. It is not meant to look real. It is an artificial habitat. Just put some water plants down, make the water a bit deeper in case the raptors want to go for a swim. Put down some more bromeliads, and I line the rocks with some cacti. I kind of wish there were more cacti options for the garden decorations, but for what we have, this works fine. Then I put down some aloe vera. It's all spiky and deserty. I was also thinking about putting down some elephant grass, but the enclosure seemed a bit too crowded already with vegetation to put them. So I just decided to line some of the outlines of the cliff with cacti, just to give it a bit more color. Then I put down some sand, mostly around the trees and the vegetation to keep it separate from the grass. I don't know why, but it just looks better to me, in my honest opinion. The next touch I wanted to add to the bridge, I put down some information boards, which would obviously highlight information on the Velociraptor. And I merged them into the group with the bridge after lowering it down so guests could actually see it. And like any other park attraction, I put down a donation box and some benches and trash bins, because this is a long bridge and people are obviously going to want to sit down at some point. And that's pretty much all the benches and the bins. The only thing that I really needed to do then was add some lights, but we'll get to that when we get there, obviously. I copy and paste some of these modern lights that kind of remind me of a hammerhead shark's head for some reason. I don't know why. And then I turn on, angle snap so I can just copy and paste them all around the edges equally. And I just tested to see, if the path will align with them properly, and they do. So that will be perfect for future builds when I get around to them. I then touch up the habitat a little bit, coloring in the edges that still have grass. I touch it up some more on the inside. Make it look nicer. And finally, I add some lights around the bridge. Because it is a big structure and guests are going to want to see in the dark. And to keep it on theme, I also made the lights a bright orange. You know, because it is a desert and, theme and all that stuff, I guess. And there you have it. That is the speed build for the Velociraptor habitat. So, in a moment, I will show you guys everything that has been done here. And then we'll show some cinematic camera shots of the enclosure and the dinosaurs. And here we are in Prehistoric Kingdom with a new park entrance that the game has kindly made for us. I didn't have any problems with the previous one. I don't know why they changed it, but you know what? This looks cool. I might change it up though, because this looks incredibly bare. So I might change that a little bit off camera or something. But, the guests come through here. They read signs. They get their tickets. They come out. And, of course, with you getting the VIP access, you come through here. And this is where none of these people should be. But this is where the hatchery is, hidden away by all these trees and stuff. I didn't even notice that the banana trees actually have bananas on them until now. So that's a nice touch. There's just a nice gravel path going around the whole outside. Turn again. It's just a massive structure. Again, it's stupidly huge. The whole thing is concealed by these concrete walls. I'm hoping that the devs eventually release staff paths that only staff members can use, like in Planet Zoo. That would be awesome. But anyway, the first thing the guests would see are these two habitats right here. On the left is Achaeopteryx, and on the right is Microraptor. So here are the Archaeopteryx over here. Just chilling and chirping like songbirds, hiding in the birdhouse, eating from the bird feeder. I heard that they're gonna rework these aviaries. I wonder what it's gonna look like, and if the animals will actually have habitat needs when that comes. But yeah, you can see one Archaeopteryx about to take off, flutter in the wind. It's gonna fly around again onto the ground. And we can take a good look at this guy. So cute. And of course, climbing up a tree. Now, if this was a cage, they could actually cling to the walls. But again, I don't like the image of these guys being trapped in a cage. And then over here we have the Microraptors with their temperate biome chirping away. We can see one climbing up a tree here. And Microraptor is actually a dinosaur we actually know the colors of. Because pigment was actually found in feather impressions in their fossils, which is really cool. So, of course, Prehistoric Kingdom's team have completely replicated it. It's just iridescent blue color, which looks amazing. We can see this one climbing up a tree. All the aviary creatures so far share the same animations, and so far there are only 2 aviary species. I'm hoping we get some more in the future, because only having 2 seems a little boring. I would like to see some more, like some prehistoric birds or compies or things like that, like just small animals. And then the guests will walk around the bridge and see another feathered creature, the Velociraptors. So why don't we go down and say hello. So in this enclosure we have 4 Velociraptors, 2 males and 2 females, and you can kind of see all the work. You can see that I made some changes to the shelter over here, so they can walk up this ramp and get to this blood pumpkin I've left up here on the top. There is a fence up there and some rocks to keep them from getting out. And in the shelter, we have some bedding for them to lay on to escape from the sun and the heat, and the prying eyes, I guess, in case they want to just hide away and just rest and not be stressed. You really gotta love the model. This is one of our females here, and there's a male coming up behind her. Very beautiful looking. I love the models for the Velociraptors. I'm kind of spoiled by the prehistoric planet raptor because they had like no scales on the snout. It was more like a keratinous beak, which I think I like more than the scales on this one's face. But you never know with these things. Also, the sound effects for these Velociraptors are absolutely beautiful. They sound very much like a songbird or something. Something you don't typically hear from these dinosaurs. Normally, like in media, they screech or bark or whatever, but it's nice to hear them actually sing like a bird or something like that. And here's their little pool. You can see one female over here swimming a little bit, looking quite graceful, and like her feathers are all wet. I would really love to see if they would add like a shaking animation for where they would shake water off from their feathers. That would be nice. But yeah, we have this rock shelter over here. We have the bridge going across the habitat. Carnivore feeder over here for them to, nom on so they have something to eat. We have all these different trees, for them to find cover in from the sun, because this is a tropical map, so they're going to need to get away from the heat. At least until we add some like heaters, coolers, and things like that into the game. And then, of course, all along the edge, we have the cliff wall that keeps them inside their pen at all times, so they have no way of getting out. All in all, for this tiny little enclosure, I'm happy with how it turned out. I honestly have made this enclosure so many times, it kind of felt like, this was the pen I wanted to make for a Velociraptor, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. Oh, there's one actually sleeping in here. Oh, yay! Look at her. Oh, yeah, and also the iridescence of the feathers. You can see that. The way they shine in the light. Oh, it's gorgeous. And I love the little animations where they leap into the air to catch a fly. In fact, if you listen closely, you can actually hear the fly as they leap up to grab it. She seems to be having trouble getting out of there. Yeah, these are the best Velociraptors I've seen in Endgame. But look at this. Listen. Like, you can hear the flies just before they get up and snatch them. This is a really nice touch. And we can see one of the males here eating out the blood pumpkin, which is well and good to see. And there you have it, folks. This is the Velociraptor and Achaeopteryx Enclosure. So with that out of the way, let's get some cinematic shots of the pen. And that's basically where we're going to leave it. So if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe today, hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything new. I put up a poll on the channel to discuss which build I should do next between Protoceratops, Psittacosaurus, and Solidosaurus. So vote now so we can decide which dinosaur we're going to build an enclosure for next. So with that said, that's pretty much where I'm going to stop. So, leave a like, subscribe, hit that bell so you don't miss anything new. All my links are in the link tree in the description down below. And until next time, this is Tyrannosaurus signing off. Alright then, take care now. Bye-bye then.